So I was talking with a friend recently, and she told me that she's pretty much done with church. And when I asked her why, she started listing off all the other things that she's got in her life. She's got yoga for a sense of spiritual embodied connection. She's got group chats to talk to her friends. She can go to the gym to exercise. And the more she talked about all the reasons she was done with church, the more I realized she had a really good point.
So why would anyone go to church? That's a question our next guest is tackling with the millennial generation, trying to be heard by some in mainstream church. But are they listening? Kevin Makins is a pastor and author and joins us now. Kevin, why did you write this book?
You know, I wrote the book because I totally understood what people meant when they said they didn't want to go to church. You know, I'd hear them describe their reasons and say, yeah, that's pretty compelling. Like the way that so many of us have been taught to think about church, it's about the message or it's about the music. It's about some component of the show that just isn't that impressive anymore in the modern world. There's too many other options. You've got podcasts and TED Talks and live events. Well, we used to have live events. We'll have them again. But the idea of church competing with these things just didn't make any sense. And as I and my friends were learning to love the church, we were finding that we were loving all these different things that actually were just entirely different than the show, the sermon, the song, and learning that those were the things that really made church unique and really made church powerful.
You say in your new book that the way church is being done is no longer working. What isn't working and why?
Yeah, and every church is so different, so I don't want to make too broad of a statement, but I know for a lot of churches, trying to keep up with the secular culture around us isn't working because we're no longer in that time called Christendom, where we're going to have so much money and so much influence and so much grandeur that people are going to come to us to be entertained. And I actually don't think it's a bad thing to lose that, because that gives us an opportunity to remember what has always made the church so powerful, which is a sense of community, the forgiveness of sins, being tied into something that's before us, and lest Christ's return very shortly will be after us. So all of those things were so powerful, but so many of our churches are putting so much energy in trying to compete with the world or trying to be interesting or relevant. But really, a lot of those things we just can't do anymore. The world's gotten too good at it, and we've lost our resources. So it's time to think of an old way that might be new again.
Yeah, you know, Kevin, Angus Reid recently had a study that said 67% of Canadians believe in a higher power, but there is a clear differentiation between attending a church service and having faith. How can you reconcile the two if you have been hurt by organized religion?
Yeah, and lots of people have been hurt by organized religion, whether it's them directly or someone they love who is hurt, or maybe it's just the impression they get of the church from social media, from maybe news sources. And so I initially kind of want to say, well, no, church is great. Don't worry about it. Come on. But we have to let people be where they're at. We have to meet them as real people where they are. And part of that means saying, okay, so you've experienced some hurt. Instead of trying to dismiss it or defend the church, let's both acknowledge that the church has been at her best amazing, but at her worst, really not great. And so let's name some of those feelings together. Let's confront that pain together. And then let's ask how the kind of spiritual family that Jesus is founding, that his life was to set up these communities. Let's look at how that maybe lines up with the church as she's been, but also how that challenges the church. Rather than correct those people, I'd much rather pull them into being part of the solution, because the church does need to reclaim her roots as God's family, and we have lost the way at points and in different contexts over the last 2,000 years.
Yeah, maybe face some of those difficult conversations. Tell us, so why? Why would anyone go to church?
Because church is the only place where I'm put in a spot where I have to take all my ideas and all my tweets and I have to put them into action. So I have a lot of great ideas online. If you get me ranting, I've got a lot of thoughts. But I might say we should feed everyone. But the church looks at me and says, well, there's a family that just had a baby and they need a meal next Tuesday. And there's a refugee family down the street that just moved in and we're trying to get them settled so you could drive them to work next week. And suddenly all of my idealism about life and faith and values becomes very, very concrete. So long as the church is a community of people trying to follow Jesus together and encouraging one another in that, there's just not going to be another place where we get to put into practice the way of Jesus as much as in the context of a local church in a parish together.
Wise words. Live what we are preaching. Pastor Kevin Makins, author of Why Would Anyone Go to Church, and pastor of Eucharist Church in Hamilton, Ontario. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.